Hello everybody and welcome back to True Crime with Nat. Today I have a case that was requested and I'm glad that she requested this because it's a very interesting case that is so close to being solved and it just needs a little bit more coverage. If you guys could just help her out a little bit, look into this case some more. Help get the word out about this wonderful woman who sadly lost her life years and years ago. Okay, without further ado, let's get into it. So today we're going to be covering Wilma June Nissen. There's a lot of people who are saying it different, but I think it's Nissen. She was born October 18th, 1954 in San Francisco, California, to Charles Nissen and June Bradford. Her mother has since passed away in 2003, and her father has passed away in 1986. Going back a little bit, rather than, those 2 years I just gave you, about 1962, when Wilma was about 8 years old, her mother left her, just up and left her and her sister. Her sister's name is Mona, and left them both in the custody of her father, whom neglected them so bad. Like, the girls didn't even go to school, and when he went to work, they had to stay in the closet. They had way less than ideal lives. Like, it's so sad. And then Wilma's life, from just the beginning to the end, is just so tragic. It was just such a hard life, and I feel so bad for her. And then her sister Mona was blind or deaf. I'm so sorry if I got that mixed up. But so she's got a tough life too. And then her sister was killed, unalived. I'm sorry. So in 1964, the girls were actually removed from their father's care, thank goodness. And then they were put into foster care, and their lives were actually better while they were in foster care. And then after she aged out of foster care at 18, like most do, she started to hitchhike and eventually got into selling herself for money. In 1973, she married a man named Donald Wellington. A few months later, or later that year, or the beginning of next year, something like that, she did have a son, but it ended up not being Donald, so that wasn't very good. But later that year, they had another son named Donald Wellington Jr., and that was his child. And then in 1975, Wilma lived with a man named Robert Irvin, and then married him in June of 1977. And then later that year, 1977, they had a daughter named Crystal Irvin. I believe she goes by Chrissy now, something like that. And in the beginning, when she was first birthed, she was adopted by Wilma's foster parents, like Wilma's last foster parents. And Christy is not sure what happened to her brothers after this. I'm not sure about to this day, but as far as I could find out, she doesn't know what happened with her brothers. And then in 1978, Wilma started living in a camper with a man named Charles Belt in Georgia. It was close to his parents, so it was kind of convenient for him. And then Charles says that one day Wilma just left, and he has not seen her since. Later that year, on October 4th, Wilma's body was discovered in a county on the very northwest side of Iowa, and she was only 23 years old when her body was found. 23. That's a year younger than I am. Like, how tragic. That's so sad. She was found by a couple linemen who were working on some electric lines along the road by some cornfields, and she was found in said cornfields. The investigators theorized that her body was there for around 120 days before being discovered. I'm sorry, please do not mind my cat. He is so mouthy. Hang in there with me. So, when she was discovered, the investigators found no other evidence around her body. They also believed that she had been unalived before she went to that location. Her body went to that location due to some rope being around her ankles, and it kind of just seemed to them like she was more dragged into where her resting place was. So currently at the time, she had no ID on her, so they couldn't ID her, and in 1978, trying to figure out whom that she might have been was just nearly impossible. She was named a Jane Doe and was laid to rest with a gravestone reading unidentified woman. This is where she would sadly be laid to rest for 3 decades with no answers to her family and nothing. They don't even know who this body belongs to. So about 20 years after she was found, then in 2006 they were able to get a fingerprint was found that matched this Jane Doe, and it came back as a match for the missing Wilma June Nissen. In September of 2007, investigators announced that they were going to re-examine her body, but when they pulled her out of the ground from her resting place, they realized that everything was full of water, and it was pretty much just her bones floating in the water. The pathologists that were helping studying her case were still able to take some samples. And at this point, they were able to actually identify her cause of death, but they have not released it to the public since the investigation is still ongoing. They did arrest and charge one man for the crimes, but in February of 2010, he was released and all charges were dropped since there was evidence that he was not the correct person, not the one who murdered Wilma. The police are currently investigating a couple women, who would also sell themselves for money. And Wilma often hung out with these ladies while she was waiting for her next client. So the main girl that they're looking for, she goes by the name Sugar, and the police know her real name, but they haven't released that either. And there was another lady. The other lady's name was Peaches. She went by Peaches at least, and they do not know their real name, her real name, Peaches' real name, but they know Sugar's real name. They really believe that once they identify these two ladies, like their real names and who they are, that they will be able to nearly solve this case, or better yet, might even actually solve the case. Wilma's daughter, Christy, who never got to meet her mother, is still working every day to bring her mother's unaliving event to justice. And that's just truly amazing for her to do that, and I'm sure it's so hard to fight for someone who you had never truly met, you know? But she's very strong, and I highly encourage it. So unfortunately, that's everything we have today. If there's any updates about maybe someone who is arrested and charged for the unaliving event of this young, beautiful woman, I will let you guys know, of course. But until then, if you have any information, you can call the anonymous hotline at 712-472-8334. Help get this information out so we can bring this murderer to justice. And until next time, have a good one and stay safe out there.